So I've got Mr. Joe Listhouse here today. Joe's been working with me a couple of years, first in the final expense side of things, and now on the Medicare side. He routinely writes 5 to 7 Medicare plans a week, has really dialed into things as of late. And the reason I'm having him here is to basically explain kind of how selling Medicare works for those of you out there who may be curious of taking advantage of this wonderful opportunity in the Medicare space, and to get more insight on what it's like to be a Medicare agent. So Joe, how you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Good to see you again. I'm great, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I was very appreciative when people get on in front of an audience and are willing to share. So thank you very much. So Joe, why don't you start us from the top? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up into this weird world of selling insurance.
Weird indeed. Weird indeed.
Yeah.
But yet fun at the same time. This world of selling insurance. I mean, probably about 5-6 years ago, I was actually doing catering for private jets. So anybody who flew private anywhere around the world. Yeah, I don't know if we ever spoke about that, but
Cool.
Anywhere around the world, I was sitting in an office up in New York, and I was coordinating food delivery, making sure nothing had peanuts in it for those people with peanut allergies and all that stuff. And just making sure up to par food was delivered to the airport, to the private area of the airport known as the FBO on time for the flight. And I probably did 500, 600, 700 orders all over the world. So that was a pretty crazy ride, very stressful business in general, but
I imagine
it was a great experience nonetheless. And after that, I was looking for something else. And a buddy of mine had a P&C agency, a home and auto insurance with a captive company. And I joined them for about 2 years, did really well there. Got recognized by the company for being a top person in the area, which was really nice towards the end of my stay there. And it just kind of came to a point where I realized I wasn't building anything for myself. I had written a lot of insurance into my friend's book, which I was very happy because he gave me a great experience and was a great guy to work for. But it was time to take the next step. And I went into the final expense arena with another IMO and was there for about a year or a little over a year maybe. And then, was watching David all throughout the journey over there. And eventually just followed that yellow brick road right down to the man behind the curtain. And there he was, David Dufort, just waiting for to get me set straight and on the sales training. And as David said, yeah, I started with final expense with you as well. And just recently, back in June, end of June, I wrote my first Medicare plan.
Awesome. So I'd like to take a couple of steps back here, because on this broadcast, a lot of agents are aspiring, maybe not even licensed yet, that are watching, or they are kind of licensed and they just don't know what quite to do. And you mentioned that you were working, I think, with a PNC captive shop. Is that correct?
That's right.
Can you briefly talk to that? Maybe there are people out there who think about selling car insurance or homeowners insurance. Can you give us kind of a brief summary of kind of what that is like day to day and what the pros and cons are like?
For sure. So I'm sure the experience will vary, depending on who you're working for, who's running the agency and whatnot. But to put it pretty simply, I mean, the plus of selling auto home insurance is that, hey, everybody needs it. Everybody needs to have auto insurance. The minus of it is that everybody needs auto insurance, which means that everybody is just, a lot of people are price shopping and they don't really value the relationship as much as in other forms of business, something like, life insurance, which you're probably, hopefully only buying once in your lifetime. Or if you buy multiple policies, you could do that from the same person, but you should have an insurance policy for many years. And buying one later will not be very beneficial because it will likely be more expensive unless different type of policy and whatnot. But so yeah, auto insurance, a lot of it comes down to the price and just a constant battle on price with people. And we knew that our product that we were selling, which again was a captive company, so we only had one product to sell, was not the most competitively priced in the area. but there was one part of the coverage, one line of coverage, which was very competitive. And that was just our selling point over and over, trying to help people understand that you need a lot of this specific line of coverage, which was correct and accurate. But at the same time, we knew we weren't beating them out on price. So it made the game really hard to play because, of that lack of price competitiveness. And at the same time, I would say 95% of the people that I didn't write was due to one of two reasons. It was either because of price, just was nowhere near competitive, or because they didn't qualify for the one product that I had to sell. I mean, the lack of ability to just move to another company, another product, I was just wanting that, but that just wasn't the opportunity that I had put myself into, not really knowing what the other side might even have looked like. So that was kind of
and think about it, like, what's Geico's call to action? Call and save 15%. It's not about the quality of the coverage. I mean, who knows even? I don't know anything about the quality. It's just the funny commercials and saving money. That's a terrible product to sell, in my opinion, where it's always about price. It's not about relationship. There's no sellable factors except dollars and cents. That's a low margin business, not to say that there can't be success in it, but it's a tough product to sell, when there just isn't as much interest. And that's been drilled. I kind of think it's the fault to the extent of the companies too, because they're the ones drilling into everybody's head that you should care about the price. That's the only thing that matters is the price. It's just, but you don't see that same level of obsession with price in like life insurance or Medicare, even, as we'll get into. There's more of a value proposition, which leads you to have space to create a relationship and a longer term client. So pros, lots of prospects; cons, lots of competition, I think, is kind of what it sums up to. So same thing in final expense. Tell us what led you to final expense. What are the pros and cons there?
Yeah, I mean, final expense, what led me to it was just the idea of sitting face to face with a client. I always felt that I was doing phone sales when I was in PNC agency. And I always knew that there's nothing that can beat a face to face interaction with somebody, especially being able to sit in their home. Although at sometimes you'll find yourself in some interesting situations, to say the least. But in the end of the day, just having that powerful, ability to impact somebody in a true and positive way. Somebody who's buying, life insurance in today's day and age might be super skeptical, and they get 1,000 scam calls on their phone all day. And not to discourage the telesales folks, because they can crush it just as well. But just from my point of view, I mean, just that ability to get down with somebody and be able to have a face-to-face interaction with something that is a difficult product to sell because of the intangibility of it, the fact that they can't get it until they die, so they never even really see the reward of this product. But just being able to get up and personal with people, that just really attracted me to the business. And the fact that I knew there were some renewals built into final expense. I didn't fully understand them in the beginning, but I knew there was some sort of residual payments on those products. And that was just the entire reason for getting into business in the first place, for getting into insurance in the first place, was to make some of that residual long-term type income.
Right. And we're going to get to that in a minute on the Medicare side, because what you find with a lot of agents who have done this long enough is they realize, like, there are some products that make really good upfront money, but very little backside money. And you have to put in the same level of effort, just like in your first day in the business, as your 10th year in the business, to make the same kind of money, usually more. But what happens over time, and what we like to talk about with my agents, and the course is available on the Insurance Sales Success classroom. It's called the 500,000 a year in 5 years or less, which is really built on the idea of generating a semi-passive or residual-based income through a health insurance product. Again, we'll get into that more. But a lot of agents migrate that way because, let's face it, how long you're going to work 80-hour weeks? At some point, you're going to get exhausted or life changes. And how you build your business is very important, because that day will come for many of us. And having a lasting residual income, it's a game changer in this business. I did it more on the agency building side. What we like to teach agents who don't want to recruit and, do the MLM thing is to do it on the sales side with specific products. So real quick, cons of final expense for those of those out there who are thinking about selling final expense. What would you say some of the cons or drawbacks of selling final expense are?
Yeah, I mean, number one would definitely be chargebacks. I think it's something that's not spoken about enough. But
Right.
and again, chargebacks, it's kind of a little, even when I say it, it's a little misleading because it really comes from a fault in the philosophy of how to sell, which David teaches the opposite of, but trying to get so much out of a client, which they truly can't afford the product that you're selling them, and 2-3 months go by. And for all you who might not know what a chargeback is, it pretty much means that there's somebody asking for the money back that they've given you, that you've already gotten that great feeling of, I got him to sign the dotted line. I put this coverage in place for this family, right? Whatever approach you want to look at it. In the end of the day, they're coming to take that money back. And you kind of dig yourself into somewhat of a hole when it comes to those, because you got to either write business. Hopefully you're writing enough business that it should never really weigh on you too much, which thankfully was my situation. But hey, there are many agents that end up with tens of thousands, if depending on the quality of business that they're writing and the volume of business that goes with that, of just chargeback debt. But that coupled with, having to get told no a lot, there's one undervalued skill, which I think is just passed over time and time again. People are so focused on knowing the information, which, hey, is super important. Knowing the products, super important. But there is one skill that you get paid for as a salesperson in any industry, and that is the ability to just keep on going, to get told no, to pick yourself up and keep on going. I had a day the other week I was telling David about where, in the same day, the first appointment of the day was just a ridiculous situation, and there was a whole argument with another agent as well. And what I did after that was I went right to the next appointment. And then later in the day, as I was driving, somebody hit my car and got away. I called the police, had a little police report filed, and from that police report went to my next appointment. And, it's definitely not something that I would have thought to do in the beginning, starting out of this business. But come this point now, it's so clear to me that is the skill that you get paid to deliver on, is to just go to the next people and just keep it going.
Resilience. It's a character trait to build, and it's an absolute requirement for any sort of sustainable long-term success in any entrepreneurial endeavor, especially insurance sales. So now you've gotten to the point of getting into Medicare, which is kind of arrives at our discussion point today. Why Medicare? What about Medicare now at this point in your career is appealing to you versus what you've already done in the past?
Sure. Just to give a little background on even the healthcare side at all. I just out of, I don't know what made me do it, but I guess when I got my life license, thankfully I got my health license with it, but I'm pretty sure that I failed the whole health side and I passed the life side, and they gave me both. So I was pretty happy about that. But I did not understand a word about healthcare. Really, just you say the word deductible, and I was lost. I just didn't understand it. It was tried to be explained to me many times, even for my own personal healthcare, but I couldn't wrap my head around this concept. So even thinking about sitting down with somebody, and I know the clients that we're sitting with because I've already been explaining final expense to them, which is a very simple product to understand. You pay monthly, you die, you get paid. But, trying to explain this idea of healthcare, which I just had no clue, A from B, no pun intended. I was just totally lost, but David recommended it to me as, to kind of fill that need that I was looking for, of starting to build a more true and reliable passive income for the future. And of course, no income is truly passive. There's always some work that has to be done on the service side and whatnot, but very little to my experience so far. But just that idea of getting into something which pays on a monthly basis on the renewals. Hey, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do.
So a couple of things, just if you're new to insurance, again, each product pays differently, right? And what you're probably seeing a lot in this business is a lot of talk about selling mortgage protection, or even talk about selling final expense. And the reason those are pushed so much is because there is a great need for it. There's a great big audience for it, but also it facilitates this MLM multi-level marketing type of mentality a lot easier because there's a high first year commission and a very low residual. Okay. So it allows for this kind of pyramid build out that you see in a lot of these organizations, but you don't hear a lot of talk about Medicare because Medicare is not a first year commission driven product. It pays a lot less than the typical product. But what makes it advantageous is that over the course of time, assuming you keep your client on the books, that continues to pay a level commission, the same as that first year for the rest of the client's life, specifically writing Medicare Advantage plans. We can get into the difference there. If you guys are interested, just start asking your questions below in the chat. But the big draw to Medicare is this ability to create a lifetime stream of income. You just can't get that with the life insurance products out there unless you get into recruiting. And that's a whole nother animal altogether that may or may not interest you, that comes fraught with a lot of risks. So as a producer, Joe, feel free to pick it up from here. You're getting into Medicare because of the long-term opportunity to make a sustainable type of residual based income, correct?
Absolutely. And that's really on the financial side. I mean, I don't know if we can get into the numbers of it just to really understand how it works, because I was not clear on this, from way back, but just through the experience. Are we allowed to talk?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of give the idea of what it means of what the residual would look like on Medicare versus final expense to compare these two animals here. The final expense by the second year, probably, I mean, the top comp on a second year product for renewal and final expense, 6%, maybe 10% of that initial.
And that probably translates to like $4 or $5 a month.
Exactly. Yeah. Not much, right? Pennies in the pocket. So it's cool that you'll get these constant little drips, coming in, which is nice. Those daily, what do they call them? Daily deposits,
right?
as I've heard said, but they're not consistent per se, because it just depends on how much business you're writing. And, that's not paying bills, and that's certainly not leveling up your lifestyle to be able to just enjoy, that true meaning of the passive income. Whereas with Medicare, by the time you get into that second year of the plan, this year, the commission's at 301 for the year. What I love for renewals, right? What I love is that everything is regulated. Everything is simplified. So I know that however many clients I have on the books, all I got to do is multiply that by 301. That's for the year per client, and just divide it by 12, and it tells me my monthly deposit. So if you could put 100 clients on the books before going into 2024, you're coming into 2024 before you roll out of bed with $30,000 in renewals. That's a pretty easy, very, very attainable level of clients. I mean, you should be able to exceed that, I would think. But for sure, in the first year, to get $30,000 in renewals, I kind of just think back to my prior experience in the insurance industry, and between the different, positions that I've been in, I've written well over $1 million in premium throughout the different products, and I don't have the renewals to show for it. But if I would have done that with Medicare just a couple of years ago, the renewals that would be coming in would just be ridiculous. And that's really kind of how I look to the future of what I want to be doing here. So just that idea of that fixed cost or that fixed income coming in per policy on the Medicare side just really, really enticed me into it. And that's just from the financial standpoint. To talk about like the product standpoint, Medicare Advantage in most parts of the country. I'm blessed to be in South Florida, where we have the most competitive and most well-designed Medicare Advantage products that exist, I think. But throughout the country, most Medicare Advantage products are a $0 a month premium to the client. So if I were to ask you what's the number one reason in a final expense appointment that you didn't close the person or that the policy got charged back, the same reason is that it was too expensive. They couldn't pay the premium, whether that be $10 or $150. Hey, some people just can't keep up with those monthly premiums. That's never, ever the issue in Medicare Advantage. It costs nothing. So
wait a minute, Joe. Are you saying Medicare Advantage plans don't cost a premium at all per month?
I'm going to say to drop better. I don't ask for bank account information ever. It is not something that you ask for in a Medicare Advantage sale. There is no exchange of bank information.
I want y'all to understand, if you're new here, Medicare Advantage, and this is how the product passed in the Bush era. I think it rolled out in the Obama era, and it's been through ups and downs, and not everybody loves Medicare Advantage plans, and there's certainly some things you can say, but our market that we like to target is a lower income market or working class market, and they don't have a lot of money laying around. And so they look at Medicare supplements, which is another type of Medicare policy you can buy, but those are $150, $200 a month, and they go up in price. And these Medicare Advantage plans look very appealing because the networks have gotten very good. The product offerings have gotten very good, and they've been designed to where they literally pay no premium dollars a month. Now, you're not technically, as a credentialed Medicare Advantage agent, supposed to say they're free. They're not free. You paid your whole life into the system, but there's not a premium. So you as an agent are selling something that doesn't cost a monthly premium. Now, how hard is it to sell something that's $0? You got to be, and to make it better, how much underwriting do you have to do, Joe? How much health questions you got to ask? How hard is it to get it approved?
Well, I'll say like this. When I'm asking health questions, that's because I'm doing an HRA, which is this little health assessment that exists at the end of the plan after you've already enrolled somebody. And you get paid anywhere between 50, 60. Some of them pay $200 to just ask 10 health questions. So the answer is, for the actual plan, 0. No health questions, no underwriting at all.
No medical underwriting. No medical underwriting.
That's correct.
So Alan's got a good point here, and I'll kind of address this. You still have to pay Part B premium. Well, maybe. Depends on how little money you make. If you make below, and Joe, you're the expert here, help us out. There's levels where you may get your Part B premium back, right? And that money comes out anyway before you get your check, if you have to pay it. So it's not any additional money outside. But go ahead, Joe. Feel free to explain that.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty about Medicare is that you're, in final expense, when you sell someone a final expense plan, you are 100% helping that family out. There would be no way for the family often to pay for that funeral. You are putting something in place that is just avoiding a wreckage of a situation, 100%. But in Medicare, you are doing that on a here and now basis. This month, tomorrow, the rest of this year, how is this going to affect your health coverage majorly, whether that affects the actual coverage or the money and all that stuff. In terms of the 170, which of course now 2023, it's 164.90 a month. So it went down a little bit. There are 2 ways of getting out of that. And I saw somebody posted that there as well. Number one is you're on Medicaid, right? So one of my absolute favorite things to do, and I always have these pending, I have at least 1 or 2 pending right now, are Medicaid applications. I don't get paid for them. I wish I did, but if I run across somebody who is making below that threshold, it's different in different states, but for me, it's about $1,600 is the highest for a single person that they're making income wise monthly. They're eligible for Medicaid and they don't even know it. So the person that I just sat with, she's getting paid some $870 a month. 170 of it is going to Medicare. She's not walking out with much, and she's got rent to pay. She has a car payment, good old car insurance, and all that good stuff. There's too much month left at the end of the money for this person. By signing her up for Medicaid, that's super beneficial for her because right away she's going to benefit a whole bunch of money straight up, the $164.90 right away on a monthly basis. She no longer has to pay for Medicare, and then other additional benefits that exist within the plan as well, and of course food stamps and anything else. But more importantly, maybe not more importantly, but at the same time, it's beneficial for me because it allows me to have an open enrollment period for this person, and now I can enroll her into a plan, no problem, and it's just beneficial for everybody.
So let me make sure this is vital to understand. So a lot of people don't understand the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid is a state-based program that helps people under a certain income level. Okay. And part of that benefit, if you're on Medicare, is that when you get enrolled in Medicaid, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, if you're under that threshold and you qualify for Medicaid, that 165 and change or so, that Part B premium, like I think a gentleman mentioned in the chat, you get that money back, correct?
That is correct.
So what Joe does not only helps them with their Medicare plan, but then gets them their money back. They love you. Do you think they'd buy anything? They buy anything from you if you help them get $165 back a month. If they're making $800,000-900,000 a month, they love you. You can't do any wrong. So yeah, so understand, like, this is powerful stuff. Like, and what's cool about Medicare when you're selling it, you're not really selling anything. You're giving stuff to people that they just were unaware of, they were qualified for. You're helping them get all of the stuff that they're naturally eligible to get. And through the process, getting them a better policy. It's powerful. And would you say it's, as it relates to selling final expense, do you feel like it's easier overall? I use the E word, but easier overall getting into the door, having a conversation? What's the sales process like compared to selling something like final expense or another product?
Yeah, I mean, to exactly what you said, first of all, it's 100% easier. And I know that that's a bad word to use, but it really is. I mean, it's not easier because it's easier. It's easier because you're doing a different type of job. You're giving them something which is improving their life right now, today. Right. I mean, that person who's now getting it's as if I'm going to knock on her door every month and hand her $164 and say, here, this is for you. And I'm the guy that facilitated that for her. So that's just one aspect of what I've done for her. On top of that, she's going to get all of her medical expenses are pretty much going to be reduced to zero. She's not going to have to pay anything for anything. Her medications are all going to go down in cost, less than $3. Most of them are going to be zero. She's going to get a free, food card to spend every month, depending on which company we go with for her. Some of them are given out in my area, $275 a month that you can use for food, for rent, to pay your electric bill. I mean, it is just absurd what I've been able to help people with. And it's really just from my knowledge of, hey, I studied this. I know well enough what I could do to improve your situation. I mean, it takes me at this point less than a minute to really understand what the person's situation is. And I know right away which options are going to be better than hers. Less than 60 seconds is where I'm at now to be able to do that. The next question is, make sure those plans take her doctors or his or her doctors and medications. That's super important. You are talking about these people's healthcare. You got to treat it as such. But in the end of the day, if all those check out, which 9 out of 10 times we could find something that's better, it truly is a tangible difference for this person, that their life, their healthcare, their experience is just going to get better. And those type of people are the type of people that stay with you forever, which is what we're after here, the renewals in that game. And they're also the type of people who tell up everybody to come and talk to Joe, because he's the guy that just got me all this money back every month. And it was painless. It took 2 seconds. I signed on his iPad and it was done.
So we've talked a lot about the advantages. Again, kind of summarizing this: lifetime income, right? Of residual based income, no medical underwriting, no more frustrating experience trying to place clients because there's no medical underwriting required. Most of the plans that are selling are zero premium. And we're selling a tangible good that people just understand. Everybody knows they need health insurance, especially in your 60s, 70s and beyond. You know you need health insurance. You've seen people around you suffer, have sickness. Maybe even that person has. They get it. It's understood. What are the drawbacks? Let's be just unbiased here. What are the drawbacks to selling Medicare?
And one more just to add in on the positive, kind of included in health, but it's a good one. No age restriction. Hey, final expense goes up to 85, 89 on top products, but after that, you're just done. There's nothing I can do for you. But Medicare, no age restriction either. So it's another.
Mildred's 90 years old. You can still help her. Hard to do. Final expense.
Oh yeah. The drawbacks are pretty simple. Also, I mean, number one, biggest drawback I think especially for up and comers is there's a lot of information to wrap your head around. I was very slow to learn this stuff, but it didn't take me that long. It took me 2-3 months to really wrap my head around it. Long amounts of time every day. The good news is that within David's group, there is a lot of Medicare support, a lot of Medicare. I mean, I think there's 3-4 years of recorded meetings of just information. You got Luis, who does his class every week. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of information that's available. So if you're not learning it in a reasonable amount of time, it's just the same as anything, right? You're not spending enough time on it. But that being said, even though you can learn all the Medicare stuff there is to learn, still a negative is that every single county has their own specific plans. So whereas with final expense, if I'm not clear how this, exact product works with whatever carrier, I can call David, or I can look it up, or call whoever, and they can kind of give me just a straight answer. This is how this works. With Medicare, hey, if I call David, I call Luis, and I ask them about a plan that's in my county, they're not going to know the answer to that because that's county specific. So you have to take ownership of the plans in your area. Of course, there are support lines from the carriers to help you along with that. And there are broker reps who are specific in your area to help you understand the plans better that are available to use as a resource. But that nonetheless is what I would say negative. And the second one, of course, is the commission, right? Especially in that first year. Medicare commissions in first year are confusing to understand, but in the end of the day, it's real simple. The first year you sign somebody up, it's assuming they're already in Medicare, they're still, going from one plan to another, all that stuff. It's the same 301, but in that first year, you get prorated for the month for starting for when the month of the plan is effective. So to make it real simple, we're just going to use 300 because it's a little easier to deal with, but if it's $300 and I write them today, so the plan is going to be effective the first of the next month, which will be February 1st. I'm going to get an upfront commission of roughly $275, 300 divided by 11 months. Pretty simple. I'm going to get that upfront. If I write them in June, first effective date is July 1. There's 6 months left of the year. I get half the money. I got $150. Fairly simple, but obviously those are considerably less than most final expense commissions. But the good news is that you can cross-sell. You can do both compliantly, of course, but you can sell both products, and that can help fund your business. And again, Medicare is more about the long-term game of the residual passive income than it is about the here and now 2023.
Yeah, a couple of things I'll add to that. What Joe is describing here is replacements of existing Medicare Advantage plans. If you write somebody first time that's new to, say somebody retired, they're 67, they're starting Medicare, you're going to get a new to Medicare commission, and that's 301 double, or $601, and then $300 and $301 residual for the lifetime each year. But in our system, the one we teach at least, we're more the bigger market of opportunity, and the easier ones to get to are the people who already have Medicare that you can show them a better deal at. So more of what we do, probably, I don't know what your numbers are, Joe, but I would say 80% are replacements, 20% are new to Medicare. But you'll get some of that. So that kind of helps with the commission. But yeah, and then the last thing, commissions is lower. That's definitely the drawback. Owner here in the chat said, so is the path to sell final expense first and get into Medicare sales? That's what we teach, because what I've seen time and again, and maybe this is counterintuitive. We're here talking about the greatness of Medicare, but we're kind of telling you to wait. What a buzz killer, right? But the truth is, cash is king in this business, right? If you're running a business, cash is king. Cash flow is king. My dad had a business in the chemical business. He got into corporate America, started doing chemical sanitizers for like Pilgrim's Pride and Conagra, and they pay 90 net, so he'd provide materials up front, but wouldn't get paid for 3 months. And he was making all sorts of money, not yet received. And he had to sell a bunch of his furniture. His nice house had nothing in it just to make ends meet for those first 3 months early in his business. And the point is, likewise, in our business, when we're first starting, most of us have to make money yesterday. That's how I was. I had debts to pay and rent and food to put on the table, right? So Medicare is not as good at doing that on a higher commission basis. But over time, the superiority of Medicare is that, look, 400 clients, if you guys have done the math, times $25 a month, that's your commission you get after the first year. That's 10 grand a month. that can come in, and 400 policies isn't that hard to do if you go out and work a full-time on a schedule for a couple of years. That money could be coming in every single year or every single month, 10 grand, like clockwork. You got to take care of your clients, and yes, some of them switch and die, of course, but that is a nice thing to have. And that's really what we employ in our long-term strategy, at least what we teach, is getting agents to do that idea into year 2 and beyond, is incorporating Medicare on a part-time basis. And as they see the fruits of their labor and the income coming in, do more and more of that, to where as the residual base grows each year, they do less final expense and then really scale up on the Medicare side or the ACA health insurance side, which we'll have somebody to come in and talk about that another day. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's something I'm excited to share with people, because most people don't know much about the insurance business, much less the passive income opportunity. And it is a life changer to first run your own business, and second of all, get checks for work you did years ago, and then have time to do other things if you so choose to. Life isn't all about work. I love working, but it's about family, other things, right? And you can run a business that helps incorporate that, not minimalize that. So a couple of questions from the chat here, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see here. You need to have a health license to sell Medicare Advantage. Absolutely. Really quickly, Joe, give us the rundown. So you got to have a health insurance license. What else do you need to sell Medicare Advantage?
Yep, you got to have the health license. You got to pass the AHIP, which is an annual test. That's what you got to do to keep those renewals in the book. But to take one test a year to get that renewal check of, hey, if you have 400 clients, 10 grand a month, sounds worth it to me. Was it a hard test? Yeah, just like any other, you have to know the information, just like the health insurance or the life insurance exam, pretty much all the same. The only other hoop that you really got to jump through are, of course, after you get contracted with carriers, is you do have to do carrier certifications also every single year. And that's just going through the carrier specific training. Those are pretty much it. Once you do that, you're going to be what's called ready to sell, and you're ready to sell, but just like the name suggests.
Now, if you're like me, you hate taking tests. So why would you embrace this? The answer is simple, because you're doing things that other people don't want to do. And the nice thing is, in this space, what that means is less competition. If you're selling final expense or mortgage protection, there's a ton of competition, still very viable business opportunity, but there's more barriers to entry from an economic standpoint. A lot of people won't sit down and take a test. A lot of people won't sit down and pass the test and go through all this process, but that means less people that you have to deal with. And that's ultimately means a more lucrative business. Patrick says, I just heard Joe say, sign on my iPad. Is the dig system automated like Family First Life and Kingdom Insurance? It's not. Well, you have to define what automated is. You still got to go out there and talk to these people and convince them to buy. As a new agent, wondering how I can make less mistakes. I'll say this, and Joe, if you want to add anything to this, I'd look at this pretty simple. Every carrier has electronic applications. So that's not anything that's unique. You'll have to kind of clarify on the automation side how you mean by that, Patrick, and then I'll try to better answer it. But yeah, the whole e-app, real simple. You just sign here and they finger it in or use the stencil or whatever. Nothing complicated.
Yeah, not too many mistakes to be made on the Medicare side. I mean, if you're checking the doctors and you're checking the medications, and it's not like anything is ever super permanent. There's always ability to switch back to their old plan if they really need to. But there's not really many mistakes that you could make, especially like David said with the e-apps. I mean, they're just super simple.
Question from Alan. Hey, Alan, to sell Medicare through the year, we would really have to focus on the D-SNP. I'll let you explain what that means, market, to make it profitable. Is that right?
Yep. So great question. D-SNP, just to explain that phrase, is dual special needs plan. That word dual simply means that they're eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. So both low income and they're on Medicare, so they're over 65 for the most part. The benefit of that and why that's even relevant for selling year round is that when somebody is a dual eligible, they're on Medicaid and Medicare, there are 3 eligible enrollment periods that they have throughout the year that everyone else doesn't have. Once a quarter for the first 3 quarters of the year, you're able to switch their plans once every quarter. So that means that there's a lot of opportunity when you're sitting with somebody to have what's called a special enrollment period, which of course is what you need to be able to switch a plan for somebody outside of the annual enrollment period, which just ended in the beginning of December, or the open enrollment period, which is now through March. Do you need to focus only on the D-SNP market? Absolutely not. There are other SEPs that are available. For instance, if there are plans that are rated 5 stars by CMS, by the government, that you can use once a year per person, year round, that never ends. So that's a huge one. There's also disasters. South Florida, we have our shared disasters, but it's not just hurricanes. It's some other sort of disasters that they have throughout the year. Of course, COVID was a big one. I don't think that's really going on anymore. There's the moving SEP. If somebody moves from one, county to another county, or even probably maybe even within the same county. I'm not sure about that, but definitely one county to another is certainly a reason for an SEP. Turning 65. So point being is there is a major amount of business, but super important, even for the people that you're unable to write because you don't have a valid special enrollment period throughout the year for them. Those people are just you're building your pipeline for the end of the year for the annual enrollment period, where you can go back and you've already established some FaceTime or some phone time with those people that they're going to trust you and recognize you to be the person that they call upon, or that you go and visit them again for the annual enrollment period. You do have to sign what's called the permission to contact form, which is just them signing that they allow you to contact them again towards the end of the year. But you're just building your pipeline of future business. And if you think about it, if you, for whatever reason, can't, you sit with and are unable to sell because of a lack of a special enrollment period, let's say there are 50 or 100 of those throughout the year. I mean, you're starting off the annual enrollment period with 50 to 100 leads who have already seen you, you've already established some sort of trust with, and you know what to do for them. The only reason you weren't able to help them was because the government didn't give you that option to do so. So
yeah, thank you, Joe. It's amazing. Couple of things come to mind. First of all, a lot of people think you could just sell Medicare at the end of the year with what's called annual election period. That's not the case at all. What Joe does and what we teach is to sell year round using the D-SNP strategy, special election period strategy. And there's lots of ways to help people with their Medicare plans throughout the year, just like Joe said. So just everybody understand that this isn't like a 3-month type of job, then you disappear. I mean, it could be, but we teach you to do it all year long, all year long. The other thing, I remember an agent of mine, Michael Daniel, he said he first started in final expense, or he was selling Medicare, one or the other, but he ended up starting AEP with like 150 people he could not have helped, but he could and wanted their help during Medicare. And he sold like 150, maybe even 200 Medicare Advantage plans to all those clients he saw throughout the year. So understand it's not a sunk cost. It's just something you have to bank later. And you definitely want to go see those people. You're like, you're at the 10-yard line, just go back and wrap it up.
And it honestly fits, just that concept of the seeing them later. It just fits so well with the mindset that you have to have in Medicare versus the final expenses. This is a long-term type game you're playing. So just because you can't get that first year commission today, you can get it later and they'll still be on your books for 2024 as a renewal. So you're still right. Going in, you're still keeping it on your books, and that's really the name of the game.
Carpenter asked, I don't know if you know the answer to this. What is the link to remove yourself from the scam likely list?
Yeah, that is a difficult problem, is the scam likely. There are links that are around. I don't know them off the top of my head. I know that if you, probably go through Verizon, I think has one. I know there's a website like HIYA or something, Hiya, I think it's called, has one.
Yeah.
I used, when I was dialing, I used a tool called Phone Burner, which I paid for on a monthly basis. And one of the things that they do is they help you to not get flagged as scam likely, but it is just a difficult issue that exists today's day and age.
Mike asks, I'll answer this, is multi-state licensing required? Absolutely not. You can get licensed in your state, like Florida for Joe, and just sell your county and you'll be just fine. Granted, it depends on how many people live there. If you're in a more rural area, you might need to pick up more counties, right? But you don't have to, by default, work a bunch of different states. I'm more preferential to the agent in Medicare, at least, that targets a local approach. The one thing that's been, Joe, you can speak to this if you'd like. I'd like to hear your opinion. The one thing that's been probably the biggest issue in the Medicare space the last couple of years is just the constant inundation of telemarketed calls and Joe Namath and JJ Walker saying that their stuff is the best thing that's ever happened when it comes to the Medicare plans. And people are just like sick and tired of getting what we call churned into a bunch of garbage policies. It's terrible. And there's been some compliance stuff that's popped up to kind of defeat that. But I think the remedy to that is to be, your agent. I'm your agent. I'm around the corner. I live in the same town as you do. I go to the same functions you do. You can trust me, right? I'm not some dude who knows where he's at that doesn't care. Joe, any thoughts on that as far as strategy goes of how to sell?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right that a big competitor is going to be those 1-800 numbers that Joe Namath and whatnot. But in the end of the day, I explain this to people that ask about it, or what happens often is while I'm sitting with them, 5 commercials come up on the TV
Yeah, right.
for the same thing. And they get 4 calls at the same time for it as well. They get bombarded all day with Medicare. The way to beat around that is exactly like David said. You are somebody who knows the plans in this area. So when I explain to somebody what happens when you call a 1-800 number, you're calling a call center. So that means that you have a person who's sitting somewhere who deals with plans all over the area. In our county alone, there's almost 50 or 70 plans in total throughout the one county. I mean, imagine you have 7 counties to work. Now imagine you have 500 counties to work. I mean, it is not possible for you to be a specialist in that area. 9 times out of 10, they're going to get you in a worse plan that you could have gotten had you spoken to somebody who knows your situation, who knows the plans in the area, and can truly put your needs before their own. And just to solidify it, I mean, especially to talk to just being a face-to-face agent, sitting with them, showing them that you're for real, that you're straight up, showing up at the door sometimes on a door knock, and they can just kind of feel the energy that, wow, this guy knows what's going on. Like, this guy knows I can trust him. Having my phone number in their phone, I put it in for them. So it's already in there. I know it's in there so that if they ever need to call me, I have their number in my phone and I pick up and I greet them right away. Hey, David, how you doing? How can I help you? What can I do for you? It's so nice to hear from you. And just that personalized touch, which in 2023 is difficult to come by in any industry. And certainly for these folks who are in the senior population who are used to that way of doing business as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, if anything, we've gone too far the automation way and, just do it on the computer, forget about it. You don't need to talk to a real human being. A lot of people are like that, but our clients on Medicare grew up in a different era where they appreciate service. And with Medicare, it is, you can screw up Medicare bad. And some of you guys don't appreciate this because you may not have health issues, but you could switch out into the wrong plan because some guy called you and just sold you the world that, this plan is the greatest thing ever. And you lose your cardiologist, or you get your insulin prescriptions go through the roof. And this stuff is like life and death. Okay. So being that guy local that understands the market, it's what people want, and it sells. Now, a couple other things quickly through here. Joe, thanks for being on here the whole time. I thought we'd go 30 minutes, but we got so many questions and I'm going to answer them. So thanks. Patrick says, what's the difference between the open enrollment and the rest of the year? Real quick. 3 different types of times to sell Medicare. Annual election period is from approximately October 15th to December 7th, approximately. That's when every Medicare beneficiary can switch out their Medicare Advantage plans. No special election period required. January 1st to March 30th is what's called open enrollment period. And that's basically annual election light. I think you have one option, right, Joe, to switch your plans out. If you find out what you got or what you have just wasn't suitable, because plans change. And it's just kind of a second right to change it. And then the rest of the year is what we would call special election period. So this is where you hunt out those opportunities to qualify a client based off of a special election period. Maybe they have a chronic health issue. There's a plan that can help them better, or their income's low and they qualify for low income subsidies or extra help. And these triggered that opportunities to switch over Medicare Advantage plans. So it sounds like a lot, guys, and it is. It's definitely a lot more moving parts than just selling burial insurance, but that's what keeps us less competitive. And really, as you do this, you just learn this stuff, just by exposure.
Hardest to learn, easiest to sell.
Exactly. That's the best way to describe Medicare Advantage.
Yep.
Automation. Do you have a phone system that ties into your leads and CRM? I don't know if you're asking me, Gary, but it is something that it depends on which program you join in mind. We do for the agents on the final expense side that want to be in our career program, that don't want to buy leads. We use something called VanillaSoft. For those agents that want to buy leads on the final expense side, VanillaSoft's a great dialer to use. It's very good. Keeps track of things well. It works fine for Medicare, I could imagine. Joe uses, you still use Phone Burner, or have you?
Phone Burner, and I use one called Agent CRM as well.
Yeah. There's too many good CRMs out there. Like, it's hard to go wrong. And arguably, you don't, well, I would say you need a CRM for Medicare, especially after the first year. But to get started, it's not the end of the world if you don't have the CRM situation taken care of. It's more important to get leads and start helping people. Which reminds me, somebody asked, what leads are best? Joe, what do you think? What do you use?
Yeah, there's no question. Direct mail. I mean, I've worked them all, but fresh, exclusive direct mail leads. There's just, especially for face-to-face agent, there is nothing like sitting in front of somebody with a piece of paper, or in my case, it's just on my iPad. I pull it up, that has their handwriting. They remember doing this. This is a high intent thing. Just to compare it to a Facebook lead, for instance, or any other, digital type lead. How many hours a day is a typical, person who's sitting at home doing nothing, spending on their phone? Most of these forms have autofill. If not, maybe they have to type in all their information. Not a very memorable experience. But again, when you're dealing with the senior market who grew up in the times before digitization, and they're going out and they're getting the mail and they're reading through this thing, they're writing down their information, their name, their age, their address, their phone number, email, and they're putting it back in an envelope, going back to the mailbox, putting it back in there. I mean, that is just natural for them. That is what they recognize. And I can't even tell you how many people have been skeptical about all of the other types of leads, but direct mail to them, it just makes so much sense. Of course, I put something in the mail and somebody came out and helped me. That's how it should work. They don't trust the Facebook stuff and the phone stuff. And that's just the experience that I've had. So hands down, direct mail lead, fresh, exclusive.
So it's going to vary by organization you're in, but I can tell you this, in our crew, 90% of the agents that are producing 5 to 10 plus applications a week in Medicare are on direct mail.
And I think in other organizations they are also, but they don't admit it.
Yeah. There are other big time not necessarily Medicare, but final expense or mortgage protection, where you see them writing all this business, and they like to think that it's the cheap digital leads that they're doing, but they're doing direct mail too.
And there's merit in everything, but direct mail, you'll just have an easier time converting the leads, both to setting an appointment and selling the lead. It'll be a quicker sales process, an easier sales process, and just less adversity to face against.
Right. Mahendra, I'm just licensed in Tennessee. Hey, I'm in Chattanooga. Can I do telesales even though I'm with an IMO? With the DeFord Insurance Group, can I do telesales? I'm assuming that's what you meant. Yeah. If you join us, we teach telesales for final expense and Medicare. We have a whole one-on-one coaching programs with tenured agents that will teach you the script, drill you on it. Lots of intensive coaching. It's a new program we rolled out. DavidDeFord.com for more information. Patrick, automation for Medicare, comparing plan prices, final expense, compare each provider who will or who will not take the customer. Yes. There are software out there. InsuranceToolkits.com is great for that on final expense. If you want to do an underwriting and pricing comparison tool, that's probably best in class. For Medicare, we use Sunfire. Sunfire is the best tool. It basically it's a web-based piece of software. It knows which carriers that you have. And when you put in the zip code, doctors, and prescriptions, it pumps out the best options and allows you to conveniently look at the different side-by-side
comparisons, which doctors are in network, which are not, search for a new doctor if they need to find a new one for whatever reason. Very great tool to use. And you do the enrollment straight from there also. David, are you contracting for Medicare? David is contracting for Medicare. Local events, relationship builders, Carpenter, 100%. That is a huge one. People see you locally. They can trust you right off the bat. Of course, you have to do everything compliantly. And, you know, Medicare does have this compliance hoop to jump through, but it's only a big deal if you make it a big deal and not so hard to do things compliantly. The other thing while we're on that real quick is that certainly in Medicare versus final expense, the help and just the vibe that you get from the carriers, from the companies to help you is just a night and day difference. With final expense, I never got, you know, any specific help from the companies themselves, but in Medicare, I mean, these companies will help you set up a booth. I've had companies that have paid me for leads that have literally just deposited money in my bank account to help out with marketing costs. I've had companies send out mailers for me, you know, and had people calling in the number that was on the mailers, and that was my number, and they just spoke to me directly on a company branded piece of mail. So a lot of help that you can get from different relationships that you build.
So Ebony, yeah, we do contract for Medicare. Sorry, cough my brains out over there. Medicare is a big part of what we do at DeFord Insurance Group now. If you can check out more information at daviddeford.com/FAQ. Local events are relationship builders for sure. I know that's something Joe's been working on.
Yep.
Alan asked, how do you legally pivot from a FEX conversation to a Medicare conversation?
I like that wording, legally pivot. Definitely just do it the right way. So FEX to Medicare, you have to have them ask you about Medicare. And great way to do it is, I see somebody's picture is the good old ask me about Medicare, a pin, or I got a good kick out of this. Somebody said that they were wearing a mask, and, you know, imagine sitting across the table from somebody that just has these big ask me about Medicare letters right in your face that whole time. I mean, how can you not mention it? A hat, a shirt. Some people have their cars wrapped. I mean, whatever you got to do to have them ask you about Medicare to go from final expense to Medicare, and you could do that compliantly. To go the other way from Medicare to final expense compliantly, it needs to be a separate appointment that you actually deal with the final expense. In other words, you can go outside and come back in or schedule another time, whatever you got to do to make it a separate appointment to be able to sell the final
I'll be
expense.
back in 2 minutes for our next appointment, Mrs. Jones, right?
That's right.
And I know what you guys are thinking, like all these dumb rules really are real. Yeah. A lot. So you're dealing with a product that's, you know, government influenced heavily, right? And in the beginning of Medicare back in 2008, there was a lot of issues. You know, people would cold call and run roughshod, and seniors were getting really beat up with these products that just weren't that good. So there was a big push to put up these barriers to entry to make it harder to prospect. But some of that is loosened up. There used to be a 48-hour cool down period before you could pitch. That's all gone now. So it's become a lot more business friendly, thankfully. Yep. I know this would be county and market. So we'll end on this, Joe, if this is all right. I know this would be county and market specific, area specific, but what is the normal percentage I might expect on PPO versus HMOs?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're asking about what you're selling, or if you're asking about availability. Availability, in general, there's going to be more, at least what I find, more HMOs available. Just seems to be the way it is. What you'll sell, the same thing, HMOs. And again, I mean, some people could look at it as a bad thing, and HMO, it's limiting. These Medicare Advantage plans have such robust networks that there's just no shortage of doctors that they you know would have to be able to that they would need to find that you wouldn't be able to find in an HMO plan. Not only that, but the HMO plans have better extra benefits, dental, the vision, the hearing. All those benefits are typically going to be more for the client on an HMO. And again, you're never locked in for life to any of these plans. So if they go through a year on an HMO and they're like, you know, I don't need all this extra stuff. I want next year, I want to switch to a PPO. You're their guy. So make sure you call them or they call you, and you're the one that switches them, and all is good because they're still on your books, keeping them happy, and everybody's happy. So that's the name of the game.
Joe, thank you so much for being here. You spent a full hour with us. I had some other stuff planned, but it was a great presentation, great day in the life overview of what it's like to sell Medicare. Hope you guys out there got a really good education on the realities of selling Medicare, the pros and the cons, certainly some of the other products as too. Of course, you can always reach out to me at daviddeford.com. And if you're interested in selling Medicare, we absolutely recruit agents across the country to do it, whether they want to do it in person or over the phone. Our biggest sales pitch to you as an agent is we will train you. That is the biggest issue in this business on Medicare is there's very little involvement or engagement beyond getting contracted. People tend to forget about you and forget that you exist. We don't. We're serious about training our people to be successful like Joe.
And if I could add in, David, just to publicly say thank you to you for everything that you do and the availability that you make of yourself to the group in general and to individuals is just unparalleled in this business where it's a very recruiting heavy business and there's not a lot of independent focus on independent agents. And really everything that I've been talking about is much of a result of David's direction and David's advice. So just thank you to you personally for me for all of that you do.
Thank you. Thank you kindly, man. I appreciate you being here.